today in this YouTube video, I'm going to be talking about some of the challenges of going through your spiritual awakening journey while also being around people who are also not awakening, like your friends and your family. I'm going to be talking about my personal challenges, certain things that I had to face, certain things that I had to go through, that I know a lot of people have also had to go through that. Over the past couple years, I had the privilege of working with other spiritual people and also communicating with a lot of other spiritual folks all around the world. And I really started to understand that this is such a theme, that can play out in our awakening journey. And many people do have to sort of go through this whole, shift, like very transformational, transformative shift in consciousness around family members and around friends. We're going to talk about how going through something like this can really affect the people around us. So when I was going through my spiritual awakening, it was around a lot of family members, and I got to see very quickly how this that I was going through, like my spiritual awakening, my energy, my shifting consciousness, was actually affecting a lot of people around me, especially family members, because I was living with a lot of family members at that time. But also friends as well started to become affected by this energy. But most importantly, I got to see how my family was reactive to certain things that I was going through. So, as a result of, going through this process, you become more aware, and you want to do certain things. Like for me, it was meditating, but it wasn't like meditating inside my home. It was more like going outside by a tree and meditating every single day. So I think to some degree it kind of like shocked my parents. I think my parents got a little bit scared, like what exactly is going on with my child, like what's happening to my child. Like all of a sudden now she's like meditating. I haven't been somebody who used to do anything that was like very like spiritual, like meditating, like the way in which I started doing, it kind of felt like overnight it just started to happen for me. So my parents, they kind of got to see me go through that and do that. And for them, they are very old school, so they just thought like, okay, she's now becoming more like religious, and she's going to go down that path, like become strictly religious or something like that. Or they would associate the very stereotypical things of like being spiritual to me, like, oh, she's now going to be vegan and she's now going to be dancing with crystals or whatever. And they just like would see me take my yoga mat and go underneath the tree and like do meditation every single day. And I think for them it was like, it was so confusing. It was like having to wrap their minds around what was actually happening, because they could see that I was like changing, like right in front of their eye, like I was actually going through this process right in front of them. It wasn't just meditation, it was also this one time where I wanted to experiment with being vegetarian. So when I was living with my parents, I started to want to feel very inclined towards changing my diet. There was so much that was happening to me. There's so much of things that were happening within my body. I just felt that my intuition was guiding me towards just taking a break from eating any meat products and just going into being more of a vegetarian. And I think that this is what also just kind of shocked my parents a little bit, because they, everything that they were associating with being very much like, this whole like monk or going down that path, I was kind of showing signs that I was becoming at that time. So it really, like, I think scared them a lot. Oftentimes doing these things like meditating or trying to be vegetarian, it wasn't really met with a lot of positivity. Sometimes I was criticized heavily for doing these things because my parents could not really understand why, and some other family members as well. I think they also were more baffled, like what is actually going on with Suraksha, what is happening to her, so a lot of times it was met with kind of like a side eye, like, what is she doing? Like, what is going on? So for me, I didn't really care too much that I was being like judged for doing all these things. I cared mostly that I could go on this path because this is like my heart path. This is my path. I kind of was able to block out the noise and continue, but I got to see how reactive the people around me were being in terms of the change that I was going through, in terms of the whole transformation that I was going through. So I remember, like, trying to experiment a little bit with being vegetarian, and that lasted for like a year. And then my body kind of wanted me to go back and ground myself with a little bit more protein. So I had to change back. And so it really was like a journey that I was going on while being around a lot of these like family members who I knew was kind of like judging me. I mean, they didn't really understand what was happening. So I don't really blame them, but I think it was met with a lot of like misunderstanding of what I'm going through, because they would like think, oh, she's now going on the path of being a monk, and she's going to be all, like peace, and like they had this version of myself that they thought I was going to become. And it was very, very confusing, I think, also for them, and I could see that. And I could see how my energy was affecting them. Sometimes it was more positive, sometimes it was more negative, where sometimes just your presence will like spark something within somebody, like a shadow within somebody. It's like they get to kind of see it bounce back as a projection. Like they try to project it onto you, but it reflects on them. The person's presence can illuminate things that we need to work on, our shadow. And I was seeing that happen a lot. Sometimes I would hope that the people around me would see the things that I was doing in a more positive light, like meditating, or going on this like whole self-development journey. I got to see how my family members around me was affected by my energy, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way. And this made me realize that, oh, actually, I'm changing. My energy has the ability to, my presence, my energy has the ability to bring out something within somebody. To come to terms with the fact that, oh, my energy is actually that strong that it has the ability to do this, when I'm around somebody. And sometimes that person might not really like you because they might think like, oh, okay, like this person makes me uncomfortable. But what actually has happened is that you were able to bring out something within somebody that will practically like their shadow side, and they're not going to like you too much for that. Okay, if you are somebody who you have been going through the whole spiritual awakening, then you know that your energy has that ability to do that. And not many people like it when you are shining the light on the things that they are very comfortably able to keep to themselves or repress. I always felt like I wanted to be understood. I wanted to be understood by my parents. I wanted that so badly. I wanted people around me to understand what I was going through. My parents were not very much exposed to the idea of like chakras and awakening and spiritual awakening. These are things that you hear a little bit of in your lifetime, but when somebody's actually going through that, I would see that my family was oftentimes very confused, and sometimes I would try to explain it. I'll try to be like, hey, listen, I'm going through a spiritual awakening, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. And I oftentimes say it, like, I could oftentimes tell that they wanted to understand really badly, but they still were not able to fully grasp what actually was going on. Start to learn all these things about yourself. You start to learn about a lot of these esoteric things, like esoteric, experiences, and you are having them. You want to share it with people, most importantly, the people around you. And I was surrounded by a lot of family, so I was sharing a lot of these things with family members, in hopes that they will understand it from my point of view, and in hopes that it might, spark something within them. But I could oftentimes see that they could only understand it as much as they personal exposure to these things would allow them to understand it. I think that that made me feel like very lonely, because I was like, I'm going through all of this, and I don't know if anyone else is going through that, especially in the early parts of my awakening, where you learn about a lot of esoteric things, and it's really exciting you, and you've been more of a hermit, and you going through all the books, and all of this information is so new to you. It's so exciting. You're like, wow, there's this whole different side of reality I didn't know about, and I want to share it with as many people as possible. Well, now I get the opportunity to share it to as many people as possible, but at that time, it was just my family, so I was kind of sharing it to them. And I went through a very intense phase of just wanting so deeply to connect with other people who would understand me, because I knew that the people around me was going to misunderstand me, and I was going to get misunderstood for a lot of the things that I was going through. I had friends who were very like open-minded to a lot of things, and I was lucky that I could share a lot of the things that I was going through with some of my friends. Also, a lot of my friends knew that I was struggling for a long time, so they were really glad that I was able to find what I've been searching for. Yeah, but like connecting with friends was really helpful a lot, because like they got to kind of see me go from you know the version of myself that was like unhealed and a mess, to a version of myself that was much better over the years. So like when you are going through this whole process, you are awakening, you are gaining a whole new perspective on things. It can be so challenging, especially when the people around you are not going through what you're going through. There were times when in my dark night of the soul, I remember just thinking like, I wish I could explain this to people. Like I wish I could tell people what the dark night of the soul actually is. I wish that like there's this feeling within myself, like I'm so uncomfortable. Life is continuing as life does and as life should, and everybody's just going about their life, but you feel like, okay, like there's this pain within yourself, like nothing is physically wrong on the outside, but on the inside it's like things are just happening. A big part of me that would just want people to understand what like the dark night of the soul is, and my experience with the dark night of the soul, so they can better understand me and what I was going through. Because yeah, I was just feeling like everything on the inside was just like dark and like poison, going through certain things where it was like, I wish that I could explain what I'm going through right now, much more than just using words, but I can't. So many people out there I know that are also having to experience a lot of these challenges, where they are not being understood with compassion, but rather it's kind of met with a lot of judgment. Because I know that a lot of people, they have faced sometimes even worse challenges than this, because I get the opportunity to speak to a lot of spiritual people, so I know that sometimes it can be very, very challenging. I want to remind you that everything is going to be okay. Everything that you're doing right now is going to pay off in the long run. You might not be able to see it now, but your future self is definitely going to be thanking you for every single step that you're taking to raise your vibration, to go on this path of very deep, profound spiritual transformation. It's all going to happen in time, so give it a couple years and you'll be okay. Somebody who feels very much misunderstood in the environment that you are awakening in, then just know that it's very normal. You're going to get to a point where you're going to be able to share your message with other like-minded people, and you're going to get the opportunity to be in contact with so many like-minded people. You will understand that everything that you had to go through has a purpose. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for receiving, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.